In today's video, we're doing some follow-up information on trade requests made by players on the Calgary Flames and Montreal Canadiens. We also have another NHL reporter indicating he feels Johnny Gaudreau was all but done in Calgary when his contract is up and will eventually become a member of the Philadelphia Flyers. We also have some more news on the NHL waiver wire and some injury updates as well. We'll discuss all the latest news coming up next. Well, welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today, a little bit of everything. Let's jump in with the news from the NHL waiver wire. In case you missed it a little bit earlier, I put out a video talking about Tony DeAngelo. It's a little bit more of a complicated situation, so I did do a dedicated video on it. It'll be up on the YouTube cards if you haven't seen it yet, or just check the channel page here. But clearly, Tony DeAngelo cleared waivers. He's done with the Rangers. He will not be playing there again. According to GM Jeff Gorton, they are finished. They're trying to trade him now, and we'll see what happens. But for a full explanation on everything related to DeAngelo and what we've been able to confirm is true and not true and all the drama, check out the other video I just put out earlier tonight. Now, we have other news on the NHL waiver wire as well. Edmonton Oilers forward Alex Chiasson's on waivers. So he's an interesting player that very well could get picked up. I mean, he's 30 years old now. He's in the final year of a 2-year contract, paying him just a little bit over $2 million. Chiasson's a little bit of a journeyman forward who kind of peaked at a late age, but the reason he peaked, in my opinion, was just given the lack of depth of the Oilers on the time, and he took advantage of it. But essentially, he started in Dallas, had a pretty good, a hot start to his young career, and became the centerpiece in the Jason Spezza trade going to Ottawa way back. That's how long ago he's been in the NHL. Of course, he never really worked out in Ottawa, played there for a few years, scored anywhere from 12, 13 goals, never really was a great fit there. Ended up going over to Calgary after he left the Senators organization, stayed there for a year, didn't do the greatest. Again, he's, mostly playing bottom 6 minutes. I think he had 8 or 9 goals, something to that effect. Ended up in Washington for a year. They won the Stanley Cup. So, he bounced around there, got some bottom 6 minutes, didn't play every single game, but, he was in the lineup probably 3/4 of the time. And then from there, he ended up on a deal with the Edmonton Oilers. Like I said, 2 years ago, he had a career high of 22 goals. A lot of those goals were, opportunities on the power play. He was getting more top 6 minutes because of the lack of depth, and he just had one of those career years. Now, of course, he ended up getting paid for that, and now the Oilers have a lot more deeper forward group, and now he's kind of fallen down the forward depth chart, ended up a bit on the taxi squad, in and out of the lineup, and at this point, they need more roster flexibility. He hasn't been really doing the best when he's been in the lineup, so at the end of the day here, he goes on waivers. Now, there is a team like the Boston Bruins, for example, who was interested in trading for him during the offseason. There was a lot of talk at one point that the Bruins and the Oilers had discussed a swap of Alex Chiasson for Anders Bjork. Of course, that deal never ended up materializing, never happened, but still an interesting situation. I wonder if the Bruins might take a look at him on waivers to add a little bit more secondary scoring, a little more depth. I know they've been doing, pretty, better in that department, but still, considering they had interest before, I'd be curious to see if they have interest here again. Now, if he does clear waivers, it might also be a situation like, some other guys, maybe a team will want to take him on, but needs to move a contract out first, so we could still see a potential trade, and if there isn't any interest, he can go to the taxi squad or the minors and kind of go back and forth for 30 days or until he plays another 10 NHL games. So we'll see what happens by noon Eastern time if somebody else wants to give Alex Chiasson a chance and claim him on the waiver wire. Now, other news tonight, we have the New Jersey Devils are going to be off the NHL schedule for a little while. They've run into some COVID issues, and they have up to 10 players on the COVID list now, and they're going to end up rescheduling at least 3 to 4 games at this point. We don't have a full, really clear picture of it all, but, when these things happen, they tend to spread quickly, unfortunately, and the Devils are kind of a little bit of a situation that happened rather quick. I mean, they just played the Buffalo Sabres yesterday, and now they get 10 guys on the list, so we will see what happens, but the Devils are going to be out of action for at least a week's time is what we're hearing right now, but this story will continue to evolve and develop once we get more updated information on the whole situation with the New Jersey Devils. But that's a few teams now have run into this since the season started. Hopefully it doesn't get too widespread. Now, speaking of injuries, one team that could be in trouble when it comes to goaltending is the Carolina Hurricanes. We're hearing now that the injury to Peter Mrazek could be a lot more serious than what we originally had been seen and were told, and he could be out for a matter of a couple of months. He may end up needing surgery as well. So that's certainly not a good sign. They've been running with James Reimer and Alex Nedeljkovic. I wonder if the Hurricanes would be a team that would consider making a move between the pipes. I mean, it's not something that we've seen a lot really since the season started. There was a lot of goaltenders change spots before the season. We saw some second and third string goaltenders end up going through waivers, and they were claimed earlier in the year as well. Mostly third string guys that were ended up on taxi squads, but I wonder if the Hurricanes will explore any extra goaltending depth in that regard. I mean, they did have a situation earlier where they had an extra goaltender, but still nobody really at the level that can really replace Mrazek. I wonder if maybe Nedeljkovic will get enough opportunity that if he plays well, he can finally run with a starting job as well. He's been a really solid American Hockey League goaltender for some time, but still keep your eye on the Hurricanes. I wonder if they'll go looking for some extra depth, knowing Mrazek's going to be out long term. Now, I want to update the situations as well on Sam Bennett and Victor Mete that we talked about yesterday. It was reported on Saturday headlines by Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnston that both players had requested a trade with their teams respectively. They both share an agent in Darren Ferris, and Ferris confirmed on the record that both players indeed wanted a change of scenery. We've heard comments though from both GMs and Brad Treliving and Marc Bergevin saying that they weren't really aware of these situations and they weren't really in a big hurry to make anything happen. Essentially, they're happy with their team's depth, happy with how their team is playing, and don't really want to tinker with that. So at the end of the day, it's difficult to say how long this is going to drag on. But in the case of Victor Mete, he is getting a chance to play tonight. I'm not sure if the trade request becoming public really had an influence on that. And the other thing, part of this too, is even though Darren Ferris agreed that they wanted a trade, I'm not sure that they really had a whole lot of conversations with the general managers around that. But as again, like I mentioned to you numerous times, I caution you, GMs quite often deny things just because they don't want to get into it publicly. Doesn't mean that something wasn't done more recently, or maybe when they talked about it, they didn't realize how urgent it was, the situation. But we'll see. I mean, at this point, we don't have any reason to believe that it's anything close to the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation. Both are just looking for more opportunity. There really isn't any animosity or a reason that they want to leave town. They just both want to play a bigger role than what their teams are giving them, and ultimately they're not getting that where they are today. Now, Victor Mete is a player that's getting a lot of interest around the NHL. We've heard numerous teams were interested and had been even inquiring on him being available before the trade request was even made. But if he gets in the lineup tonight, I believe he's replacing Brett Kulak. So we'll see how that goes. It doesn't mean he's going to get in regularly. He's just a victim of the numbers game right now. The Habs are healthy. They're deeper than they've ever been, and it just makes it difficult. But I certainly understand where that's coming from. In the case of Sam Bennett, I mean, moving Lindholm to center and having Monahan and Backlund there as well puts him play either as a fourth-line center or a third-line winger, and ultimately Bennett is looking for more of an opportunity. Now, I did see a rumor earlier as well that Sam Bennett was a player that could be interest to the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for like a Travis Dermott or a Pierre Engvall, or a combination of a package deal going both ways. That obviously the Canadian teams very well might be trading more with each other due to quarantine rules, and it's easier to get players that don't have to cross the border here to change teams if there's going to be any NHL trade. So we'll see if anything materializes there, but it's certainly a situation where we know that Toronto had been rumored to be looking to upgrade their forward depth. Obviously Bennett can play a gritty style of game and chip in on some offense, so he might be the type of player that would fit in well with that organization. We also know that Pierre Engvall is a player that the Leafs probably would be looking to move, and Dermott's a guy that is certainly expendable, I think it's fair to say, given the fact that Lettinen and Sandin are not getting a lot of opportunity to play. Certainly think Dermott would be the odd man out if they did move a defenseman. Speaking of Sandin, there is reports out there as well that he's kind of growing a little bit frustrated with his lack of play so far as well. But at the same time, management and coaching staff are apparently talking to him saying, it's nothing to do with you. We're just have a lot of good, healthy bodies right now, which is a good problem to have, but it's frustrating for the guy sitting on the sidelines on a consistent basis. So certainly a situation to watch there with Bennett and Mete and Dermott. Obviously, I don't think Rasmus Sandin's going anywhere. The Leafs wouldn't trade him, but I can see maybe they'll make a move to try to get him some more playing time. And if they do move a defenseman, Dermott's likely the guy to go. But at the same time, they have to consider their roster for expansion draft purposes and all that too. Hard to say if there's a fit there, but there was some reports indicating Dermott, Engvall, Bennett, and maybe another piece or something, and there could be a swap we see amongst the Canadian clubs. So we'll see how that goes here in the future. Staying with Calgary, Eric Francis, a sportsman who covers the Flames quite closely, again is on record speculating about the future of Johnny Gaudreau. Now, this is not the first time I've heard him say this, but on a recent podcast, he went on to say he has absolutely no doubt, in his mind at least, 100% Johnny Gaudreau, if he's still a Flame when his contract expires after next season, that he will leave via free agency, and his ideal place to go is his hometown favorite team growing up, the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, Gaudreau is a player that he just doesn't think is willing to stay, that he doesn't really have the interest. He says all the right things, but NHL players do that. They don't want management or their fan base hating on them, saying, yeah, I'm probably going to leave when my contract's up. That's just not how things go. I mean, publicly, like I said, they typically do say the right things, make it sound like, they want to stick around even if they really don't. We'll never really get their true feelings until, usually after something happens. But he, again, is on record stating that Gaudreau does not want to remain in Calgary long term, and that he will end up with the Flyers just as soon as he's able to. Now, it's interesting to note as well that the Flyers were interested in making a big trade this past summer. There was a lot of talks between them and the Jets around Patrick Laine, and it was rumored that the Winnipeg Jets were looking for a package of probably Travis Konechny, maybe a Sanheim, or like one of their defensemen that obviously was going to be one of the main guys involved as well, because the Jets need blue liners. It was also rumored that Nolan Patrick could have been involved in some capacity too. Obviously, the Flyers balked at that. It never happened. But, would they trade for Gaudreau, or would they probably be patient and try to sign him as a free agent? I think free agency is more likely, but if they are in a situation where they're interested when he hits UFA status, if he does indeed make it there without signing with the Flames, which Francis believes won't happen, Flyers are in a situation between now and then that they'd have to move out some big money. So between a guy like JVR or Voracek or Gostisbehere, they're going to have to move out a couple of contracts if they want to make room and bring in Johnny Gaudreau, into the fold there. So difficult to say how things go, but again, that's the second time in recent months that I've seen Francis go on record to say he believes Gaudreau's as good as gone the first opportunity that he gets. So let me know what your thoughts are on Johnny Gaudreau. Do you see him staying in Calgary long term, or do you see him eventually heading back to the eastern U.S. where he's from, where he grew up, and maybe landing with his hometown Flyers longer term after this next contract? So that is all your latest news and updates for today. Of course, as I mentioned before, let me know your thoughts on everything discussed down in the comments so we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.